Welcome, everybody. It is so good to see all your joyful faces. And I am so excited for this. Before we start, I'm just going to ask everybody to mute. And because sometimes it makes a lot like background noise. And when it's your turn to read, if you forget to unmute, I will remind you. How's that sound? Okay. All right. Okay, so welcome again, everybody. We're in for a treat today. I'm so excited. Today we're gonna have eight people. Eight people. Can I ask everybody who's not me to mute right now, please? Please. Okay. And thank you. Um, Eight gorgeous voices, gorgeous authors are going to read from their stunning essays, excerpts from their stunning essays that are all in the Manna songs, stories of Jewish culture and heritage, published by ELJ Editions. So, before to start us off, I have my own little reading here. To start us off, and to share a bit about how the Mana Songs project began, I'm going to read a very short excerpt from my introduction to the book. Oh, so for people who don't know me, my name is not ELJ Editions. It is Diane Gottlieb, and I am the editor of this. I know I'm biased, but it's just gorgeous. This gorgeous anthology. Okay. And I'm going to read you a short excerpt from my intro. I love to sing, always have. I spent countless hours in my early teens standing in front of the mirror, my hairbrush as mic, belting out everything from the Rolling Stones to Broadway show tunes. Ah, the bliss. And while I still love singing solo, there's something magical about adding one's voice to a chorus. It was in Glens Bay, New York, at my summer sleepaway camp, that I first experienced the joy of being in song with others. Camp Ramah was a Jewish camp. We prayed there. Every morning, gathering in the small, cleared space butting against the woods, our voices lifted together, reaching the very tops of the tallest trees. As we sang Birkat Hamazon, I'm just making sure I'm recording this. Okay. As we sang Birkat Hamazon, the Jewish grace after meals, I could swear the cafeteria shook in response to our impassioned expression of thanks. Some of us felt God in those moments, others not. But either way, the connection to our cherished ancestors who had sung the same words, the same tunes for millennia was palpable. That was holy. That was Jewish joy. Today, I think of stories as songs with their own rhythms and melodies that nourish the soul. Who doesn't remember their favorite stories, the books we turned to when we hungered to discover who we were? Who doesn't recall the words that told us when our hearts were broken that we would be okay, that the world could hold us and would? My own heart swells with appreciation and pride when I think of the breadth and the depth of Jewish stories, the old tales of Rebbe Nachman and Sholem Aleichem, the Yiddish poets, the ever-growing Holocaust canon, the current voices in fiction, nonfiction, and poetry that sing of our rich, often challenging history, and at the same time of our resilience and resistance. Of course, there's our comedy, perhaps our greatest resistance of all. So when Ariana D. Den Blaker shared with me her vision of an anthology comprised of short nonfiction essays celebrating Jewish joy, and that she would like to call it Mana Songs, Stories of Jewish Culture and Heritage, I wanted in, all in. I have not looked back since. What an absolute privilege and honor it has been to edit this gorgeous collection of Jewish voices. 32 contributors sharing their own takes on Jewish joy. Jewish joy. It is indeed complex, rich, and beautiful. Its heart beats strong and fierce, even through the sharpest of pains, the deepest of sorrows, the most troubling of times in history. Today, Jews are facing a shocking rise in global anti-Semitism. I see Manna songs as a hopeful and necessary light in that darkness. I am incredibly grateful to have had the opportunity to bring such bright Jewish voices together in this powerful, uplifting chorus. May their words sustain you. May their joy inspire your own song. Now here we are, celebrating together. I will forever be grateful to Ariana D. Blaker and ELJ Editions for giving us this wonderful opportunity. I want to give a special shout out to Erica Dreyfus, who wrote an amazing foreword to the anthology. Thank you, Erica. Thank you to all who wrote such glowing advance praise. Truly, everybody, you have to read our blurbs. They're amazing. And of course, thank you to the beautiful contributors who have shared their moving stories and are forever a part of this proud and joyful community we've created through Manna Songs. Remember, folks, you are about to hear excerpts from these amazing essays, and you will want to read these essays in their entirety, I promise. So please copy the link provided in the chat and pick up a copy of Manna Songs for yourself or several to give as gifts. I promise the book will find a cherished spot in your home. Okay, so let's get started with the readers. The first few essays highlight different journeys of Jewish identity. And our first reader is Sarah Lebov. Sarah Lebov is a writer, storyteller, and advocate, helping to save lives by inspiring audiences to pursue genetic screening. Sarah's personal essays have appeared in HuffPost, Newsweek, Tablet, and other publications. Her memoir in progress is based on a 2012 article about coping with her younger sister's death from Tay-Sachs disease. Dancing with My Sister was published in Jewish Chicago Magazine and led to her role speaking about the importance of carrier screening for the Sarnoff Center for Jewish Genetics. Sarah is a Field and Christ Method creative movement instructor and enjoys sharing her stories on stage and online at sarahlebov.com. Sarah's essay speaks of a challenge to her Jewish identity and how that challenge made her Jewish identity even stronger.
Diane, thank you so much for that lovely introduction and for all the hard work that you have put into this beautiful anthology. I know that I and the other contributors are so grateful to you. So speaking of the other contributors, I'd also like to thank all of you and to ELJ for publishing our beautiful book and for everyone who is here today to support us. Thank you so much. So appreciate it. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my essay called Living Without Doubt. I have a secret almost no one knows. I'm not Jewish. Not technically. I was unaware of this fact until I was 20 years old. My father's first cousin, who changed his name from Alan to Eli when he left Chicago for Israel, took it upon himself to tell me. In the fall of 1996, I spent 4 months living on kibbutz Ramat Rachel. There I was a participant in Project Oren, which provided programming for Jews from around the world to live and volunteer on kibbutzim while learning Hebrew. Though I loved the friends I met there and exploring nearby Jerusalem with them, I was homesick. I alleviated some of this by writing letters to my family in Chicago and by visiting Eli and his wife and 5 children in their home in the West Bank. He'd pick me up from the train station, and as we drove to the settlement where they lived, I'd spot the minarets of neighboring Arab villages along the way. I was wary of the gun he kept in the glove compartment, but my nerves calmed once we arrived safely in the gated community where his wife would welcome me with hugs and cake. My younger cousins, who spoke no English despite their despite their American father, attempted to communicate with me in spite of my rudimentary Hebrew.
I get it.
Ellie and his family tolerated my ignorance regarding their Orthodox customs, such as the time I accidentally put a meat dish on the dairy side of the kitchen. I once tried to hug Ellie, and he froze. My grandmother later told me that it was not allowed for religious men to hug women outside their immediate family. His family took me on long walks around the neighborhood, showing me the shul where there were separate areas not only for women, but for Ashkenazim and Sephardim. It was on one such walk that Ellie recommended that I convert to Judaism. What do you mean? I blinked at him, confused. I am Jewish. You aren't, he stated. Ellie was quiet, polite, and hid his expressions behind a long beard. Your mother didn't have a real conversion, he continued. It was through a reform rabbi. She didn't get in the mikvah. It doesn't count. I was stunned that Ellie was more familiar with the details concerning my mother's conversion than I was. Although I knew she had converted before she married my father, I also knew that her Judaism was, well, flexible. She served honey glazed ham and chocolate eggs on Easter, which I didn't particularly mind. However, I never questioned my Judaism. My parents made a point of telling me that my mother converted so their children would be considered Jewish. She made sure my brother and I went to synagogue and Hebrew school until I refused to go and dropped out at the age of 12. My teenage years were marked by that same rebellion, and my time in Israel at the age of 20 was a choice I made to reconnect with an aspect of me that I had always held close, if not actively celebrated. Even if it was dormant, it was ever present. So to be told that my Jewish identity was a falsehood came as a shock. Filled with doubt, I told my father's other cousin, Nita, what Ellie had said, that I needed to convert to Judaism. Nita had also grown up with my father and Ellie in Chicago, and as a secular Zionist, had made Aliyah in her 20s. Now in her 40s, she lived in Jerusalem and taught at Hebrew University. She and Ellie, diametrically opposed on politics and religion, hadn't spoken to each other in years. That's bullshit, she scoffed. Of course you're Jewish. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you're not, especially not him. I stopped considering conversion, but Ellie's words lit a fire in me that otherwise might not have been ignited. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was beautiful. Whoops. Next up is Julia Grooms. Julia, where? Oh, there you are, Julia. Okay. Julia Grooms is a writer from Monroe, New York. She holds a BA in psychology and English, creative writing from SUNY Geneseo. Her work has previously been published in Fabula Press, Gandhi Dancer, and Iris Magazine. Julia spent last year as a Fulbright English teaching assistant at IE University in Madrid, Spain. Now, in an effort to support Jewish life, she works as Boston University Hillel's Jewish Life Fellow. So, as we just learned, Julia spent some time in Spain recently, and she writes in her essay about Jewish life there and how her experience helped to shape her own Jewish identity.
Thanks so much, Diane and Sarah. That was so beautiful. I'm so grateful to be a part of this anthology and so grateful to everyone for coming. I hope you guys, really enjoy everyone's essays and get the book after this and read the rest of them. So this is my essay on Jewish life in Spain. In Spain, the places where Jews gather are kept secret. Living Jews, that is. Anyone can find the locations of the old Jewish quarters, can wander down those streets with the aid of €2 pamphlets, can wander through the few emptied synagogues. In Toledo, tour guides brag about the Sinagoga de Santa Maria la Blanca, which they claim is the oldest synagogue structure still standing in Europe. There are little educational museums that tell you how these old, mystical Jews lived, the holidays they celebrated, the clothes they wore, the shofars and talit they used. In Segovia's Centro Didáctico de la Juderia, they even have a model of what the main synagogue used to look like, complete with blue-white holograms going through the motions of a Saturday morning service, again and again and again, at the whim of tourists. I spent a long time watching the model, watching those hologram Jews. Maybe I felt some joy at hearing these familiar songs, the songs that served as background while my friends and I crawled under chairs during B'nai Mitzvahs, stealing candies, the songs that I harmonized with before I even understood what harmonizing was. Maybe I felt something else too, a sort of numbness at those hologram Jews, at those songs, carefully contained behind glass in what the Centro Didáctico refers to as cutting-edge information technology media, at how far away it all seemed to be. In spite of that, those hologram Jews are there always to be looked at and listened to, at least during visiting hours. Living Jews, though, they're a bit more difficult to pin down. Difficult, even though I'm currently based in Madrid, which, along with Barcelona, houses the most Jews currently living in Spain. But I found a town online that has services on Friday nights, and after explaining my situation, sending in my passport picture, and answering questions about my congregation in New York, I was given the address. Pretty much all the spaces where living Jews gather in Spain, at least the ones I've seen, don't list a location on their website. It made me feel as if Spain's Jewish community was as far away as those hologram Jews in Segovia. Maybe even further, actually, because these Jews were hidden behind something far less transparent than glass. I had made it over the biggest hurdle, though. I had an address. It was to a nondescript building, and if the security guards hadn't been outside, I would have been sure that I had been given the wrong one. But I've been warned about the security guards, told that I was on their list, and after stumbling through an explanation of who I was in barely passable Spanish, I was allowed inside. It's hard to explain the way I felt that Friday night. It isn't as if I'm the most regular participant in Friday night services at my temple at home, but surrounded by other Jews singing Ose Shalom, the prayer for peace, in the same tune we used at my temple in New York, it was as if something in me uncoiled. It was as if I could breathe for the first time since I had arrived in Spain. I think it was then that I realized how much my Judaism had been this tight, clenching thing in my chest. Because Jewish life here is quiet, contained. It's vastly different from how I grew up as a Jew in Monroe, New York, where there are not only Reform and conservative synagogues, but a Chabad as well. Monroe also sits directly next to Kiryas Joel, a village made up of Satmar Hasidic Jews. Their signs are written in Yiddish, and their clothes mark them as Jewish in a way I've never marked myself. I was surrounded by Jewish life growing up, but it wasn't a constant. I was still always the minority in school, the one explaining Jewish holidays and culture to those who asked. And then in college, this was amplified as I interacted with people who had never met a Jewish person before. But I have never felt the way I did, the way I do now in Spain. I never thought I could be so excited at the tiniest sign of Jewish life, of a kippah, of a promise of a New York-style bagel, of a siddur. I never thought I could feel a crackling sort of connection at the sight of a swastika on a metro platform. To clarify, the swastika was crossed out, an arrow pointing to it, and a fuck you hanging on to the end of it. When I first saw it, I could barely stop myself from tracing my fingers over the arrow. That succinct fuck you felt important. I felt indelibly linked to whoever wrote it. Maybe they were Jewish, maybe they weren't. But they were with me, with us, regardless, and that made me feel a little bit less alone. In my search for Jewish life here, I've started to look for pieces like that. Not swastikas, but little things, little moments that make me feel less alone. I won't claim that I found a Jewish community in which I feel at home, but I have found pieces, and for now, those pieces are enough.
So lovely, Julia. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, next up, Eileen Vorbach Collins. Eileen Vorbeck Collins is a Baltimore native. Her work has been widely published, receiving several literary awards, and was twice nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Eileen's essay collection, Love in the Archives, a patchwork of true stories about suicide loss, was a Forward Indies finalist and received the Sarton Women's Book Award for memoir. Eileen writes about her Jewish identity too, and that of her daughter Lydia's in her moving essay, How Shall I Hang My Mezuzah? Eileen, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you for that introduction. I was wishing, as I looked over this, that I had instead submitted Lydia's essay that's in my book because it's so beautiful. This one I've cut down. I hope I can do it in 5 minutes, but I've cut a lot out. I hope it makes sense.
Great,
And
Eileen. Don't rush. Okay.
okay.
at 5 minutes, if just, I want to hear all your words. So don't worry so much about the time. You cut it down, you're all good.
Okay, thank you. It's called How Shall I Hang My Mezuzah? Married by the cantor of the Reformed synagogue my husband's family had belonged to for decades, I'd not given much thought to conversion. When I was pregnant with our first child, I opted to convert Reform style. When every mother in my playgroup enrolled their precious progeny in preschool, I didn't see the point. I'd be home with the new baby anyway. I don't remember why I changed my mind. Maybe I simply wanted to fit in. My husband, who'd early in our marriage convinced me to try a raw oyster, had quite abruptly become interested in following a more observant path. It was hard to keep up with his ever escalating level of observance. We enrolled our daughter in preschool 2 mornings a week at a nearby conservative synagogue. While other kids snuggled with thumbs and binkies in their mother's laps at Gymboree, Lydia wanted to be the instructor's assistant. On the long-awaited first day of preschool, my friend's son screamed and clung to his mother, his face an alarming vermilion as she pried his fingers from her flesh. Lydia marched in without a backward glance, ready to take charge. As soon as I got baby Daniel home and in for a nap, it would be time to get him strapped into the car seat to go pick up Lydia. Preschool was a pain in the ass, but she looked forward to going, happily singing David Melech Israel, Chai Chai Vikayam over and over until the tune wormed its way into my brain and I found myself silently humming it during sex. It had a satisfying pattern of accelerating rhythm. One day I asked Lydia, "How was school today?" And she replied, "When I'm a boy, I can wear a kippah." At snack time, the boys all donned their delightfully ornate Superman or Cookie Monster yarmulkes. For the more serious Talmudic toddler, there were elaborate Star of David motifs or iconic Holy Land scenes, hand embroidered on raw silk or velvet in a studio in Jerusalem. These yarmulkes were so beautiful you'd want to reach out and run your fingers over the threads. You had to keep yourself from gently lifting them off the little round heads and sniffing to see if they carried the scent of the desert. For now, one of her father's plain black ones would have to do. The earnest young preschool teacher patiently explained, "But women don't wear kippas." I persisted with my bothersome arguments until the administration acquiesced. Lydia could wear her coveted kippah. She didn't have to keep waiting to become a boy. Many more pressing issues would surface over the years, and I'd learned to choose my battles. My husband was now studying with an Orthodox rabbi at the nearby yeshiva. Our bookshelves began to sag under the weight of the tomes he brought home. By the time our children were 3 and 5 years old, we'd separated. My husband moved to a community within the Arv. His beard grew long, his payas bobbed, A kosher mezuzah graced his every doorpost. Divorce is hard for most children. Traveling from one home to the other is unsettling. For our children, it meant shuffling not only between homes, but between cultures. My husband and I were still friends. We had not initiated divorce proceedings. After 2 years apart, thinking it would make life easier for our children, I suggested we try again. He agreed. I agreed to his condition that I convert for real. My daughter had long ago given up her fleeting desire to wear a traditional men's head covering, but now she didn't want to wear a dress. There were tears and arguments. My son couldn't turn off the lights on his light-up sneakers on Shabbos, earning him jeers of muktzah boy from the neighborhood bullies. I'd converted because I loved the traditions that were part of my husband's family gatherings. I wanted that for my children, that feeling of belonging, the possibility, not the predictability of God. I'd been an agnostic but hopeful convert. I was now the biggest hypocrite of all. Our family was not reunited. We just all lived in the same house. Within 2 years, we ended our marriage, no longer friends. Lydia dyed her hair blue, pierced body parts, curated an eccentric wardrobe from thrift store finds, and created beautiful, disturbing works of art. She also began a pattern of self-harm that ended tragically in suicide when she was 15. A few years later, Daniel's high school steel drum was invited to play at the same conservative synagogue where Lydia had attended preschool. At least half the women wore lovely kippahs and stunning prayer shawls. Women claiming this, making it their own, taking from tradition what felt right and holy. I smiled at the evidence that my child had been ahead of her time. I wished Lydia could have been there to see these women, women who would sing to the Lord a new song. I imagined her small frame swaying, rocking on her heels, on her toes, wrapped in a fringed talit with all the colors of the rainbow. The rough linen shroud we buried her in was so drab, so unlike her. I wanted her soul to soar. There's a story about the common practice of hanging a mezuzah at a 45-degree angle. Two rabbis couldn't agree, surprise, about whether the placement should be horizontal or vertical. After much discussion, they reached a compromise. I wish our children could have found that middle ground that we, their parents, could not. The place they belong, where the history of their ancestors left its mark on their cells, the place that feels like home, the place that for me is like Brigadoon, a magical place existing somewhere between faith and memory, a place I can't get to every day, but where love and longing allow me to step inside its spell and become part of the community, to partake of the manna, to share in the joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eileen. Beautiful. Okay, next up is Robbie Nestor. Robbie Nestor is a retired college educator and author of 5 books of poetry, the latest forthcoming from Shanty Arts sometime this year. She has also edited 3 anthologies. Currently, she curates and hosts 2 monthly virtual poetry series. Learn more about her at her website, robbienestor.net. In Robbie's essay, she writes about how she became a Jewish poet. The impetus was a childhood piggy bank and her father.
Thank you so much to all the other writers and to you, Diane, for this beautiful anthology. I wrote this essay in response to the question, what makes me a Jewish poet? And not just a poet who happens to be Jewish. Every year at my uncle's Seder, I played the part of the simple child who didn't know enough to ask the requisite questions. I sat through seders and services without knowing their substance. No one offered to explain them, and I didn't know how to ask. Both my parents grew up in observant homes and were committed Zionists at one time, who fought in the Israeli War of Independence and thought they would make a life there. They each came to Israel independently, sharing that same dream, and helped to build a country. But the partisan battles of stakeholders in this new nation and the harsh reality of warfare they faced shook their former faith in the idea of a Jewish state. Each, my mother in the South African Air Force and my father in the American one, had participated in a world war that raged across huge swaths of land and sky. That war had been a life or death battle for their own continued existence. But close combat in this tiny parcel of land made my parents profoundly uncomfortable, as their own families had so recently been forced to flee their homes to escape persecution. My parents moved to my father's native country, the US, where they became openly skeptical about both religion and the state of Israel, though they still donated to charities befitting its people. They did not keep kosher or belong to any synagogue. As a child, I did attend religious school for a short while. In fact, learning the Hebrew alphabet made such an impact on me that when I went to the eye doctor for my checkup, I read the chart from right to left without at first realizing my mistake. It wasn't just the language either. At that time, prayer was still permitted in public schools, like the one in the Jewish suburb of Philadelphia I attended. The teachers were careful to select only passages from the Tanakh and Psalms in English translation, and I remember thinking how beautiful they were. Yet I saw that my parents, my father particularly, did not really want to continue sending me to Hebrew school when he didn't have the money to spend on a big bat mitzvah like the ones other girls in my neighborhood were having. So when he asked whether I wanted to continue my Jewish education, I opted instead to join a Jewish youth group and go to holiday services with friends at a nearby synagogue. Though my father avoided involvement in organized religion, I realize now that I got my attachment to Jewish tradition through him. At the end of every work week, he stopped off at a bookstore and a bank, picked up a book for me and a shiny silver dollar. He let me drop the coin into a piggy bank and read me the book. I loved to hear him turn the letters into tails, a trick I could not wait to learn myself. As a teenager and young adult, I found that not having a Jewish education made me a perpetual outsider. But when I went to services on the high holidays, seders, and occasionally Purim, I listened carefully to the words, though I didn't know their exact meaning. I heard them often enough to learn them by heart and to associate them with a particular service or season. When I learned the name of the central prayer in the service, the Shema, meant listen, it made sense to me. All my life, I'd been receiving the tradition as ancient Israelites had, orally. This is probably why, when I finally traveled to Israel, the language seemed so familiar. Had I stayed there a bit longer, I think I would have begun to understand and speak it. I have gradually reached all the expected Jewish milestones, but belatedly. I didn't have a bat mitzvah until I was 50, but I never let go of my Jewishness, even if shame and my ignorance kept me from learning more about Jewish history and texts. I kept looking for a community that would allow me to find a kind of home. My father's newly forged Friday ritual had a great effect on my life. Eventually, the silver dollars he continued to save for me were worth thousands. They paid for university, where I became a teacher and a writer. I still don't speak Hebrew or Yiddish, my ancestral Mamaloshin, or regularly read the ancient texts, but from my father's gifts, I learned to pay attention to the words, to carve a line out of breath, to do everything with pure intention, so it becomes a kind of prayer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robbie. Thanks. Beautiful. Okay, next up is Julie Zuckerman, our only contributor currently living in and zooming in from Israel. Julie Zuckerman is the author of the Book of Jeremiah, a novel and stories published by Press 53 in 2019. Her fiction and nonfiction have appeared in Craft, Atlas and Alice, Jewish Fiction, Salt Hill, and Sixfold, among others. She hosts the monthly Literary Modine author series. She is currently preparing a sequel novel and stories for submission and is at work on a new novel. A native of Connecticut, she now lives in Israel with her husband and 4 children. Subscribe to Julie's monthly author newsletter for book recommendations, literary events, resources for writers, recipes, and more. Julie wrote in her essay about the symbolism of a lovely handmade wedding favor gifted to her by the groom's mother.
Thanks so much, Diane, and thanks everyone. It's an honor to be reading with everyone here, and thanks to everybody. Okay. A sage gift. Bookmarks are found in every corner of my house in central Israel, wedged between pages, inside night tables and kitchen drawers, under piles of bills and mail, on the shelves that used to house my kids' toys and games and old Purim costumes, but are now crammed with books. I appreciate them all, but only one is exquisite. A bookmark given as a wedding party favor, hand-painted and calligraphed by my friend Ellie, mother of the groom. Wavy tones of emerald and fern green serve as the bookmark's border, where the thick paper has absorbed varying degrees of the watercolors. In the center, a stalk of Marva de Gola, Salvia viridis, common sage, a grand purple flower at the top and new buds forming along the stem. On the back, Ellie has written a detailed explanation of why she chose sage. She quotes from the Song of Songs, one of the 5 sacred scrolls, in which an allegory of lovers symbolizes the relationship between God and people. We read it on Passover, which begins a few days after the wedding. Dodit sach v'adom dagul mervava. My beloved is clear-skinned and ruddy, preeminent among 10,000. Her mini drash explains that she's chosen the pasuk for the similarity in the words dagul mervava with marva degula. Dagul mervava is very highly valued, very fine, revered. She writes, a definition fitting the union of a couple that we appreciate and admire, and we are so happy they have found each other. Wild sage is in bloom all over Israel in April, including in my backyard. I snap a picture of the bookmark next to my sage and send it to her, a perfect replica. We share many interests, Ellie and I, though we aren't close. I marvel at the hours she put into this bookmark project. She made at least 150. She is not an artist by trade, but a speech therapist turned early reading teacher. All 4 of my children learned to read English in her classes. Today, she's a tour guide at Noat Kedumim, the nature reserve down the road, where one can find every plant and tree mentioned in the Bible, along with scientific explanations and commentaries from our own sages, the great thinkers and rabbis and writers in Jewish history. Ellie started painting the plants as a pandemic project when tourism ground to a halt. The reserve was closed and she was furloughed. Fortunately, the reserve is open again. Perhaps I ought to frame the bookmark or a series of them, but this seems antithetical to their raison d'etre. I imagine they'd be bereft to be forcibly retired. They are placeholders, dividers between past and future transitions. Ellie's bookmark has a ribbon on top that peeks out from the pages, an invitation to dive back into the solace and contentment derived from reading. I do not luxuriate over silks or fine jewels, expensive perfumes, or Italian wines. My primary indulgence, the only gift I ever want, is books. Of course, Ellie did not hand paint the bookmark for me alone, but I treasure the gift for all it represents. The love of reading, Jewish texts of wisdom, a pause that calls us to begin again, wander in the natural world, our ties to the land of Israel, the celebration of two souls creating a union, something, love from nothing, and gratitude for our people, our books, our land, our traditions, and all we hold dear. And I want to just share a picture of the bookmark because, of course, I can't find it at this very moment, but I do have the picture that I snapped and sent to her. So that's what it looks like. And I don't have a picture of the back with the Vartora. So
That is beautiful.
yeah. And I think Ellie might be on this call. So thank you, Ellie. if you're here.
Worthy of a beautiful essay. You did
Thank
it
you.
justice, Julie.
Yes, and she just wrote to me today when I dropped off her copy of Manna songs that let me just find it, that she just finished painting her next flower, the 106th species of wildflowers that she's been painting and writing about. So,
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing the picture and thank you for sharing your gorgeous essay with us. Thank you. Okay, so we're on to Mimi Zeman. Mimi Zeman is a physician and the author of Tap Dancing on Everest, a memoir about the risks we take to become our truest selves. The book was named Best Memoir of 2024 by the American Writing Awards, among other first-place honors. Her play, The Post-Row Monologues, has been performed in multiple cities, and essays have appeared in USA Today, Newsweek, Salon, The Sun Magazine, Ms. Magazine, The Forward, and elsewhere. Her Substack newsletter, Medicine, Mountains, and More, combines medical news with inspiration from art and nature. Learn more at mimizeman.com. zemanmd.com. Mimi's essay takes us from the family Passover Seder in New York to Montreal to the Himalayas and back.
Thank you, Diane. I'm skipping some of those places as I skip over places in the essay to read, but just want to thank you and ELJ and everyone who's here today. It's just beautiful to hear this tapestry of Jewish life and stories. My essay is called When the Moon Calls Us. It's always been Passover that I enjoyed most, maybe because it's the first time I stealthily drank wine as I dipped egg matzahs in manischewitz before drenching them in melted chocolate for our family's famed, in our eyes, matzah layer cake. After each dip, I swigged a capful of wine. "She's tipsy," Mom guffawed to my grandmother as I made loopy noises from the kitchen table while licking my fingers. During the Seder, I loved how the horseradish cleared our sinuses and how my friend's father made the same dad joke every year. His eyes got wide and his snidely whiplash mustache seemed to touch the walls. "Why do we eat hard-boiled eggs in salt water?" he asked. "Because when the Jews crossed the Red Sea escaping Egypt, the water came up to their balls." The word for eggs in Hebrew is the same word as for testicles. My father was Latvian, the sole survivor of his family from the Holocaust, and 15 years older than my mother, who was born in Israel, then called Palestine. My parents met in Germany after the war, immigrated to New York City by ship, and soon discovered they were horribly mismatched. My mother had strong opinions and was as tough as they came. My father wanted to live life as he pleased, girlfriends and all, just one of the many emotional consequences of surviving his time as a slave laborer in Siberia and so many other things. My bedroom shared a wall with theirs, and rage seeped through. I got used to shrinking, hiding, keeping my thoughts and words to myself. My gut got used to feeling tight and leaden. Dad moved out when I was around 7. Divorce followed. Their arguing continued, mostly on the phone and mostly about bills. But when I was in high school, Mom started inviting Dad to the Seders. She let him lead them. Since Dad's dream was to perform Yiddish theater, He took any opportunity to sing as loudly as possible, his voice rising above everyone else's in the room. He conducted the Seder like a maestro, commanded the space like a diva. At 22, I slung on a backpack to hike around Nepal. This didn't quite mesh with my background, raised in an Orthodox community. My mother characterized this trip with her favorite word, ridiculous. But even she was no match for the strong pull I felt in my gut to go to the Himalayas. I hesitate to use the word calling, but what else would overtake all reason? The etymology of the word calling is outcry, shouting, and also a summons or invitation. Here, my leadened gut and my shrunken self summoned me away from the shouting in our house, the clamor of our city, the thunder of shattered expectations. On the third day of my solo trek, I spread out my sleeping bag beside a waterfall under a starry sky. Seeing the full circle of the shining moon, I realized it was Passover. The Haggadah says, in every generation, each person is obligated to see themselves as if they personally came forth from Egypt. They should imagine themselves experiencing liberation from slavery firsthand. That night, I connected with my ancestors as a wanderer. That night, freedom meant everything was possible and nothing was predictable. That night, I was freed from any box in which I had lived: daughter, student, good girl, quiet girl. I was freed from every voice telling me what to do. There was no, you'll do as I say, young lady, and this is my house, I say what goes. I lay in my sleeping bag, listening only to the branches creak and the water tumble. I would soon learn to hear my own voice, beckoned by the echo of Passover, words pinging through my cells, veins of memories, harmonies of throat, lamenting oppression, celebrating freedom, reclining, imbibing, inviting the stranger. Our holidays are marked by the moon, the tides of the sea, and the phases of the sky threading through us like the blue yarns of a tallit. Our tradition, so rich, summons us to glance upward to be guided, to inhale the light, reflect it, exhale the darkness, to awaken us to the subtleties in between, waxing, waning, crescent, gibbous, where the light sometimes hides. Years later, I visited New York City from our home in Atlanta with my husband and 3 children for Passover. My father had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 10 months earlier. He was gaunt and weak, but still himself when we arrived on a Friday morning, the first Seder scheduled for Monday. But he didn't make it. He died early Monday when it was still dark, the full moon shining somewhere. That night, we gathered at Mom's Seder table, along with my brother and his children and my father's current wife. We tucked napkins into our collars to cover our chests, mimicking the way my father did. We sang at the top of our lungs, mimicking the way my father did. We laughed as hard as we cried. We connected with him through the echo of his words in the walls, our voices rising together, a calling that briefly freed us from grief.
Beautiful, Mimi. Thank you. Beautiful. Next is Amy Shimshon Santo. Amy Shimshon Santo was born on Tavangar land in current-day LA and has immediate family in the Southwest, the Middle East, and South America. Her most recent books are Random Experiments in Bioluminescence, Ecofeminist Plurilingual Poems, and Piecework, Ethnographies of Place, Essays on Art, Education, Migration, and Community. She's the author of 3 poetry collections, a limited edition chapbook, and numerous academic essays for junior humanities, urban education, and more. Amy has edited anthologies and special editions for the Braille Institute Library, the LA Public Library, Revista de Critica Cultura, Libretto Magazine, Illinois Open Publishing Network, and UC Press. In her essay, Amy writes about a nighttime visitation from her deceased father, and a group of Hasidic rabbis.
Thank you, Diane. I won't lie to y'all. I've been off camera because I've been crying the whole time listening to you. That's just the truth. For some reason, I don't know why I'm so emotional about this because I read all the time and I haven't had this happen before. So I think what it is a couple of things. One is I know from time past, we used to be called the Yud, the Kotsosha Yud, the woman, the Jewish woman we didn't have our own voice in the public space. We were as small as the little tip of the Yud. And everyone here is so full and so in their stories, and the stories are so human and personal. And I think on top of that, I haven't heard a space where Jewish women are just telling their stories and we're not having someone else speak as if they're representing us, someone else even using us for their own reasons. And this feels so intense. I have like what we call escalofrío. I have goosebumps and I've been crying the whole time. So I hope I can get through this, but I want to thank Diane for putting this together. And I want to thank all of you for sharing your work. And I really wish you all the very best in your future storytelling. And hopefully I won't cry through this whole thing. All right, so this is an excerpt from my essay in the book called My Father's Floating Burial. It begins with an epigraph from Jose Luis Borges. When I write, I try to be loyal to the dream, not the circumstances. I understand death as a natural part of the mystery of life. Since death will happen to all of us, we might as well talk about it. I grew up in California, far away from our kin in New Jersey, Tel Aviv, Canada, Uruguay. Distance impacted my experience of family rituals, including end of life. I've never attended a funeral for either of my parents' families. You only have 24 hours to bury the dead, and it might have taken us longer just to arrive. I've never visited a cemetery for my father's people. The cemeteries of my mother's people stay open 24/7. They're surrounded by tall trees with scraggly branches. When I arrive, someone invariably asks me if I will go with them to the cemetery. It's a place of perpetual prayer and candle lighting. Believe me, people are there right now, jotting down wishes on scraps of paper and pushing them between stones. The living are scavenging rocks to remember their dead. My father did not believe in cemeteries. He wanted land to be used for affordable housing. One day he handed me his Blue Neptune Society identity card and said, when the time comes, quote, have them haul it away, unquote. When Pop died, this phrase glowed neon in my memory. Just have them haul it away. Don't be attached to the physical. Other than my capacity for weeping, which I've demonstrated for all of you lovely people today, I've felt completely analphabeta or illiterate about dying. Thankfully, our end-of-life rituals also include sitting Shiva and speaking the Kaddish. Pop's Shiva attracted a week of nonstop visitations from communities, storytelling, food, tears, hugs. Did you know your father was my mentor? You're too sad to do anything else, so why not hang out with loved ones and share memories? Talking story as a community helps us piece together the bigger picture of someone's life, the parts you knew and the parts you did not. On the last day of Pop's Shiva, an email arrived from him in my email inbox that read simply, Amy, test. A few days later, he appeared in my dream as a young person in swimming trunks, standing beside a melting porcelain bust of his former self. He was bouncing eagerly up and down on his metatarsals before meeting his friends to swim the seas. Then, nothing. Years passed without a sign. One night I awoke to the sound of chanting, a group of Hasidim surrounding my Pop's deceased body levitating in the air above my bed. Chokhmah, 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 they chanted in unison. Dressed in black coats, trousers, brimmed hats with white shirts, tzitzit and yarmulkes, the rabbis were laser focused. They sprinkled sand on his body, spoke to his soul with the word from the Sefirot that means wisdom. Chokhmah, 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 the rabbis chanted. The lead rabbi was the eldest and the smallest, silver beard, encyclopedia of a man. He captivated everyone's attention, guiding each minute detail of their actions. This went on for quite some time. I get out of bed. Chokhmah, 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 Chokhmah. I walk to the bathroom and wash my hands, just like we do before leaving a cemetery. Chokhmah, Chokhmah, Chokhmah. I return to the bedroom. Chokhmah, Chokhmah, Chokhmah. They're still at it. A sky full of sound with precise ritual movements. I get back into bed and decide to just give them the space to do whatever it is they need to do for Pop. The Sefirot are the Sefirot. The tree of life goes deeper than anything my rational mind could possibly grasp. Eventually, my eyes close. I never saw them leave. In the morning, there was nothing above me but the ceiling. Refreshed and a bit perplexed, I wondered what might have inspired this event. Maybe Pop had earned sky cred for serving as Rabbi Princess Baltora when he was a boy. Maybe it was a spiritual request from his father, Shloime, from Pekamian. Maybe his great-grandfather, Israel Dov Rosenbaum, the paper cutter, had wanted this done. Maybe it was the wish of his grandfather, Pyotr, who wove horsehair necklaces from prison mattresses in Tsarist Russia. Maybe it was his mother, Riva, the pianist and peace activist, who had set this ritual into motion. Maybe the whole mysterious event was just his good luck, destiny he'd earned for being a mensch. All I know is somehow what was done was finally done. His soul was cared for by the many souls who came before us. It was complete. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Amy, for that gorgeous essay and for your words beforehand. Thank you. So, our final reader this afternoon, is Megan Vered. Megan Vered's essays and interviews have appeared in HuffPost, Feller, Shondaland, the Linden Review, High Country News, the Rumpus, the Los Angeles Review of Books, and the Writers' Chronicle, among others. She was long listed for the Disquiet 2022 Literary Prize and a finalist for the Bellingham Review 2021 Annie Dillard Award for Creative Nonfiction. Megan holds an MFA in Creative Writing from Vermont College of Fine Arts, is on the board of Heyday Books, and facilitates local and international writing workshops. Her memoir is currently under review for publication. Megan's essay speaks to her relationship with a very special prayer, the Mourner's Kaddish.
Diane, thank you so much for that. Thank you for bringing us all together. It's such a beautiful spirit of joy. I'm thrilled to be here reading from my essay, Kaddish Confessions. And I have to just give a shout out. I have a number of students and friends here this afternoon, and my kibbutz sister Racheli from Toronto is even here, who I've known since I was 18. It's so nice to see you. All right. So this is called Kaddish Confessions. The mourner's Kaddish grabbed me by the kishkas when I was 13. when death first left its footprint on my life. My grandmother had been hit by a car, and my friend Anne's older brother had been killed in a Jeep accident. Collisions with finality that led to funerals and burials and evenings of sitting Shiva, huddles of people swathed in black, mumbled incomprehensible, seemingly morbid words. That summer at camp, in solidarity with Anne's grief, my friend Steph and I, in the way of teenage girls who make tacit agreements without having to utter a word, took on the Kaddish prayer with a sense of mission, reciting the compressed succession of words during outdoor services beneath the halo of scented redwoods. Like toddlers acquiring language, we repeated the phrases while wandering paths of pine needles, the heavy stone of mourning grounding us to the earth. The prayer felt clumsy in my mouth. I was relieved every time we hit the final, V'imeru Amen. I knew the Kaddish was a memorial prayer. I didn't know what the words meant. I knew that we stood while saying it. I didn't know that Kaddish meant sanctification in Aramaic. I knew it held great meaning, particularly for the elders in our congregation. I didn't know how difficult it would be to commit the words to memory. By the final Shabbat service, all of us dressed in white, Steph had mastered the prayer, while I, no slouch when it came to language memorization, continued to fumble the multisyllabic flow of words. Steph never knew I was faking it, because I launched the opening with assurance, Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah. By the time I faltered, my voice had become a tiny thread in the group intonation. Nobody noticed. Why did this prayer challenge me? Was it my fear of death, the solemn tone, the Aramaic words? Whatever the reason, I could not make it stick. The truth is, the Kaddish prayer scared me. Death and funerals scared me. Sunday school Holocaust movies scared me. I didn't understand why anyone would willingly attend an event centered around a dead person, was unable to grasp the value of collective grief, and flinched at the gloom that seized the synagogue when names of the dead were recited, followed by the dirge-like prayer. I was a L'chaim Jew through and through. I didn't know then that the Kaddish was anything but somber. I never would have guessed from the heavy tone of lament that it was a glorious, high praise contemplation about the light of the divine, the sanctity of heaven, and the hope for eternal peace, one of the most elevated prayers of the Jewish service. I now understand the prayer is meant to bring comfort and purpose to those who remain. It elevates us from suffering and the limitations of mortality, bringing us closer to the divine in whatever form that takes. For years, I continued my swindle as a Kaddish imposter. In the excruciating days following October 7th, my brother Oren told me he had a dream in which his rabbi gave him the sacred task of helping the souls of those who had been murdered ascend to heaven. My brother began a special prayer practice to bring light and ease to those who had so brutally lost their lives. After we hung up, I thought, if he is guiding souls to heaven, the least I can do is recite the Kaddish in their honor. I invoked the long ago hum of summer redwoods, and still I felt outwitted by the words, unable to lift them off the page. Words that stuck together like gluey porridge in my mouth. Words that, when translated, formed a different kind of glue, one that binds us to the divine. I believed if I could commit the glory of this prayer to heart, I could be part of the healing effort. Then it clicked. Memorization was not the aspiration. I was not being judged, nor would I ever be expected to deliver a solo performance, given that the Kaddish can only be recited with a minimum quorum of 10. Above that, as Steph recently said to me, we are all imperfect, but as a group, we create something resembling wholeness. Maybe this one imperfect prayer was my personal arrangement with the divine that had no bearing on my worth as a Jew, a person, or a mourner. It was my Kaddish. I may never have the Sitzfleisch to commit this prayer to memory. It may remain beyond my grasp, one of many heights I am unable to clear in this lifetime. Yet my struggle with the words has taught me there are no flaws when remembering those who have passed. Thank you.
Beautiful, Megan. Beautiful, Megan. What was that? What was that line? It just reminded me of us. Like I'm individually, we're not perfect, but together we.
Yeah, my friend Steph, who's just a font of wisdom. Some of my people here know Steph. We are all imperfect, but as a group, we create something resembling wholeness.
Yes, yes. And what a fitting way to kind of say thank you to you, Megan, and to all the beautiful readers today with your gorgeous words, to everybody who is here to listen, and people who will be listening on at the recording. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been just magical. It's been a lovely chorus, an inspiring chorus, a joyful chorus, a kind of a love fest. And I am so grateful to all of you. And I'm just gonna, oh, thank you, Julie. Put in the link in the chat. You want to hear these essays in their entirety. You want to read them. So pick up a copy if you don't have one. And thank you so much again for sharing this afternoon of Jewish joy with us.
See you tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow night is another one. Thank you. If you didn't get enough, and I can't imagine how you would have gotten enough, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, you can still sign up on Eventbrite. Let me see if I could quickly put that link in. Anybody have the link quick to sign?
Maybe I can grab it for you. Let me see.
Oh, I think I can do it.
Okay.
Here we go. I'm going to do that real fast. Okay. Thank you so much again, everybody.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Diane.
Diane.
You.
That was amazing. Everyone is
Thank
so
you,
Thanks
everybody.
to everybody.
bye.